திட்டங்களை வெற்றிகரமாக செயல்படுத்துவதற்கு மேலாண்மை திறன்களை தொடர்ந்து மேம்படுத்திக் கொள்ள வேண்டும். தமிழக தகவல் தொழில்நுட்பத்துறை அமைச்சர் டாக்டர் பி.வி.ஆர். பழனிவேல் தியாகராஜன் கூறினார். திட்ட மேலாண்மை நிறுவனர் தெற்காசிய மண்டலத்தின் 15வது ஆண்டு விழாவை அமைச்சர் பழனிவேல் தியாகராஜன் சென்னையில் தொடங்கி வைத்தார். தொடங்கி வைத்த அவர் மேலும் பேசியது, ஒரு திட்டத்தை அரசு அல்லது தனியார் நிறுவனம் உருவாக்கி செயல்படுத்த முனையும் பொழுது பல்வேறு பிரச்னைகளை எதிர்கொள்ள நேரிடும். திட்டத்தை செயல்படுத்த தலைமை பொறுப்பு ஏற்பவரின் திறமைகளை செயல்பாடுகள் தான் வெற்றி தோல்விக்கு காரணமாக திகழ்கிறது என்றும், திட்டங்களை வெற்றிகரமாக செயல்படுத்துவதற்கு மேலாண்மை திறன்களை தொடர்ந்து மேம்படுத்திக் கொள்ள வேண்டும் என்று தமிழக தகவல் தொழில்நுட்பத்துறை அமைச்சர் டாக்டர் பி.வி.ஆர். பழனிவேல் தியாகராஜன் கூறினார். அதனைத் தொடர்ந்து திட்ட மேலாண்மை சென்னை நிறுவன மலரை அமைச்சர் பி.டி.ஆர். பழனிவேல் தியாகராஜன் வெளியிட்ட பி.எம்.ஐ. ஆளுகை குழு தலைவர், தெற்காசிய மண்டல வழிகாட்டல் இயக்குனர் பிரசன்னா சம்பத் மற்றும் பி.எம்.ஐ. சென்னை கிளையின் தலைவரும் முதன்மை செயல் அதிகாரியுமான பர்வேஷ் ஆலம், பி.எம்.ஐ. சென்னை கிளையின் செயலாளரும் மாநாட்டின் திட்ட இயக்குனருமான விஜயா நாராயணன், பி.எம்.ஐ. சென்னை நிறுவனத்தின் பொருளாளர் சிவராம், பி.எம்.ஐ. சென்னை நிறுவனத்தின் துணைத் தலைவர் மார்க்கெட்டிங் மற்றும் தகவல் தொடர்பு மற்றும் திட்ட இயக்குனருமான தினேஷ் பாபு, தவமணி, பி.எம்.ஐ. சென்னை கிளையின் துணைத் தலைவர்கள் சுந்தரம், முத்துக்குமாரசாமி, ஹரிபாபுஜி, ஹரிகிருஷ்ணன், விஜய், மோகன், காந்தி, புவனா, சுந்தர், சுரப்பையா, ஷியாம் சுந்தர், மதன், ராம் ஆகியோர் இடம்பெற்றனர்.
I'm glad to see, first of all, that it's of such scale, because as the statistics that the President cited here tell us, this is a vitally important function and going to get more so with time. I will start, I must confess, as with most speeches, I come here and wait to see what develops. I didn't have any prepared speech, but I asked the President when I came, what would you like me to talk about? And he said, talk about the importance of project management as you see it, and give some examples from government and from your experience, both in government and outside. So I'll start with government, and if I have time, I'll go outside. But let's start with the figure he gave us, 4.8 lakh crore project overrun on infrastructure projects in India. How do we get there? What is it that drives this kind of either continuous under-budgeting or continuous setting of expectations that can never be met, continuous cost overruns, because surely that's not 1 year, that's over several years, right? And that's definitely true of my experience in government, as I'll come to in a minute. And as I was sitting here, I was thinking there's probably 3 contributing factors, at least as far as government is concerned. The first is the natural tendency of all individuals, and excessively so in politicians, to be over-ambitious in setting targets and promising outcomes. So we all think we've been there, done that, surely if we have the idea, we can make it happen. And we start setting both budgets and timelines based on some inherent natural optimism, and in the case of politicians or bureaucrats, probably, what can I say, inherent to the profession as well, kite flying. But there's a second variable that I was thinking about, and that is particularly true in government more than private organizations, is that we have very, very inefficient organizational design. The nature of government is temporary and without any real levers to align incentives. Just think about it. Every few years, the elected politicians change, most often. Every 2 or 3 years, the IAS or senior TNPSC Group 1 officers will change their jobs. almost everybody who finishes the career in the department they started is so far below the actual decision-making process that they cannot meaningfully change the outcome. At least in the case of government, it's very hard to give rewards to any real degree. We cannot promote people faster than turn. We cannot pay them bonuses. Worse, there's no way to really discipline anybody. The unions have become so powerful that you cannot really, short of suspending somebody, there's nothing more you can do. So you have an organizational design that, at least compared to the private sector, is inherently shaky. It is a structurally bad design. And then the third development that happens because of that in government is that there is no build-up of expertise, there is no institutional memory, there is no continuity. Normally, if somebody keeps doing the same thing again and again, they should get better at it. Right? I mean, that's the whole value of experience. But in government, partly because people change all the time, partly because many governments have not put in information technology infrastructure at the level they should have, partly because a lot of papers are still moving around in files. In the city of Madurai, for example, most of the drawings for the water and drainage system since 1908, which was the last major design by the British, are in paper records. Some are available, some are lost. We don't know where we can find all these. We have to do a scan from scratch. Thankfully, the technology now exists that we can rescan the entire city. But this lack of institutional memory or institutional enhancement of capability through continuity, I think, is another real driving factor of these. The collective of that, let me give you an example. When I was an opposition MLA, I once, every year for 5 years, I led the debate as an opposition member on the budget debate. And about 2 years in, I showed some statistics that showed from 2014 till whatever year that was, 2019 or something. Every year, the gap between the T+1 projection under the Fiscal Responsibility Act, every government has to project 2 years forwards finances. So the T+1 projection compared to the budget, what I would call accuracy in forecasting, the gap between the budget and the revised estimate, what I would call accuracy or efficiency in execution, and the gap between the revised estimate of accounts and the final accounts, what I would call capability in accounting or projection. These three every year kept getting worse. So it actually got worse and worse and worse. And the irony of it was the same finance secretary who was sitting doing this for those 6 years. So I said, how does the same person do the same job and get worse at it every year? And the answer is, what the World Bank told us, I'll tell you in a minute, is that it was not really their fault. What was happening was that the World Bank study showed, when we got the result last year, Tamil Nadu had about the worst outcome in terms of the gap between announcing a project and actually getting it done. So then they dig down into why that is. And they say, well, in most states, they think about an idea, they go and assess the feasibility, they get some projection of the cost estimate, and when they feel comfortable they can do it, they come and announce it. In Tamil Nadu, they will announce it first. Typically in 110, under assembly procedure 110, they'll announce the project first. Then they'll go and figure out, is the land available, can it be done, what will the cost be, and then we'll transfer that. So this was the reason it was getting worse and worse and worse, because more and more announcements were coming without any prediction or assessment ahead of time. Of course, I don't want to talk politics, but I will say that it's fixable. I was in the role of finance minister for 2 years. Both years, my revised estimate came in better than the budget, and my final account came in better than my budget. So at least, in the time that I was there, I fixed it as well as I could. And one of the things that helped was that the Chief Minister revived an old committee that we had going back to the last time we were in office, called the Major Infrastructure Projects Committee. This was a committee in those days chaired by the Chief Secretary that got all the major infrastructure project departments together and held a review and made sure that they were on track. That committee had been effectively defunct in the previous regime. When we came and got revived, within a few months I requested, and the Chief Minister granted my request for two things. One, to build a data platform underneath, which is still being improved, to track not just the projects, but who is the vendor, how many projects is one consultant or contractor doing, what is their actual capacity, are they overstretched? And the second is that I personally should chair that committee. It should not be just the Chief Secretary, but it should be the Minister of Finance who should chair that committee and drive outcomes. Of course, I'm less than thrilled with where we ended up, but we ended up a lot better than we started because we started having this kind of assessment. For example, every department has a rule that says that no project should be, or no contractor should have more than so much exposure at one time. Because everybody has limited infrastructure, limited hardware, limited manpower. But what was happening was that the same contractors were taking projects across multiple departments and there was no platform to assess their aggregate exposure across the government. It was only department by department. So something as simple as checking what they were doing across all departments and ensuring they weren't overstretched actually helped us. But you see, a lot of these things are not short-term fixable. There are macro issues. If you take the state of Tamil Nadu, between 2003, when the Fiscal Responsibility Act of Delhi and the responsibility of Tamil Nadu and the Responsibility of Management and Budget Act in Delhi came in, and 2014, every year our expenditures on capital projects as a percentage of GDP kept growing. What that did was it built execution capability. As we went from 1%, 1.5% of GDP, or GSDP in our case, up to 2.5%, 3% of GSDP, we kept developing the skill set in our local contractor and execution, kind of community. And then after 2014, that started dropping rapidly. It started dropping so much that when we took office, capital expenditure was only about 1.5% of GSDP. What happens? Nobody's sitting around with their heavy equipment and their engineers and their labor waiting around for projects to scale. So they start going to other states, or they get out of business, or they don't buy new equipment. And then all of a sudden you start fixing the budget and you can actually start spending money, but there's not enough people who can actually execute the projects. So in the case of our government, in the first 2 years, we were not able to do as much as we had budgeted, even though we did fantastic reduction in deficit, even though with the Chief Minister's support, we were able to make so many improvements in the finances. We just couldn't meet our capital spending targets 2 years in a row. There wasn't execution capability. Now, some of that is hardware, some of that is labor, surely some of that is project management capability, where a few people are stretched too thin and don't have the ability to do things in a more professional way. So I think, at least as far as our state is concerned, and if the statistics shown around the 4.8 lakh crore have not changed dramatically, our country is concerned, this skill of project management, this need for professionals who can help streamline, predict, project, and deliver close to projection will only keep on growing. I would say one word that in my time in the corporate world, though I spent about a decade as a consultant doing more realistic things aligned to project management. The last 15 years or so I was an investment banker, trader, various aspects in the financial services industry. But I would say even there, the transformation of the industry from cash securities to derivatives, securitized products, global market, risk across multi-dimensions that have to be integrated, the ability to calculate profit and loss in real time when you're in a global market, the ability to calculate value at risk, or deltas when the market moves, when the market opens in Sydney, when most of us are sleeping in New York. these kinds of skills also were very much in the project management domain because we had to build infrastructure to be able to deal with these things. And I would say part of the reason we had such an incredible drop during the global financial crisis was that the scale of the markets far exceeded the capabilities of the infrastructure to handle and analyze and aggregate and display where the risk was to the holders of the risk, let alone to the regulators like the reserve banks and the market regulators. So in every department that I've ever worked, and certainly in finance and in government, I would say that those of you in this profession and in this conference are likely to have a brilliant future because the demand for project management is only going to increase. While you have such a brilliant future, I hope you will continue to contribute to the greater good, as your president said, about the many hundreds of thousands of hours of service towards the sustainable development goals, because those kinds of ambitions require even more skill when there is no profit or when there is no compensation involved. And I hope that even as you do well and prosper, you will continue to keep that social responsibility in your mindset and continue to contribute to the greater good. I thank you all again for inviting me. I wish you a wonderful conference and a great time in Chennai. We're happy you're here, and a great rest of the day. Thank you.